Now I'm going to take a moment to gaze with each of you. Gazing with you is different than looking at you. It's the ecstatic Sufi practice of being together through the windows to the soul, our eyes, which Jesus talks about all the time in A Course in Miracles. Talks about eyesight and vision, true vision. My experience gazing with each of you, there's a sensation through my heart, through my chest. It's a beautiful sensation and a little hard to describe. There's an opening, my heart opens, and there's a pressure that goes with this opening that feels bottomless. In a good way. To really just be, to be with each other. Unhurried. Connected to our hearts openly. And this really is a practice of seeing the light in you, that light that's behind Jesus. And in seeing the light in you, feeling the light in myself, and allowing that light to take over. Light and love are the same thing, or, people experience it differently. Some people feel that love is the essence of light and life in God mind. Any direction works. It all boils down to the same inclusive appreciation. Yeah. I sent out an email, but I'd also like to share in class that one of your classmates, Monica Carradori, who went by NAbodhi, passed away on February 5th. I didn't hear about it until the other day, but I had been aware that she was ill and that she had been in a nursing home and then was transferred to a hospital. I spoke with her. And I have a very soft spot and a beautiful connection with NAbodhi. I've known her for many, many years, and she was very kind to me when I first entered the Course in Miracles community. So I just like to pay tribute to her, and I know she was ready to go and that she missed her partner, Pete, who had passed a few years before. She missed him terribly. And I hope that he met her at the pearly gates. Or in the tunnel, or whatever happened for her in her transition. And also we shared a love of cats. And she was able to place her beautiful, beautiful cat, Callie, with the lovely woman who actually, I think, was the place where she adopted Callie in the first place. So Callie has a beautiful home, a loving home, and NAbodhi felt secure in that knowledge. But if anybody ever hears that for some reason Callie needs to be rehomed, please let me know, because I will actively be part of that process to make sure she's okay. But I do believe that she is settled. So, yeah, NAbodhi.
Miss Amy,
Yes.
first say good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, family and friends. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you. I send you love and light from my heart to yours. I was wondering if could we just have maybe a moment of silence for NAbodhi and honor her?
That's perfect. Let's follow Rico's lead and just have a moment of beautiful silence and connection with NAbodhi's soul. Notice how you're feeling. So much of spiritual awakening is noticing. Another word for that is observing, raising our consciousness, becoming more aware. Empathizing. Empathizing is a genuine desire to know what it feels like to be someone else. People use the word curious a lot these days in a positive way. My preference is interested. For me, being interested in somebody is caring and it's about them. And for me, curiosity is about me. So, having a background as a therapist, I've often taken classes on being a good listener, different kinds of listening, active listening, receptive listening. And the word used is often to be curious about your client. But just personally, my ego has a reaction to that and thinks it's sort of self-serving. But to be really interested in you, to want to understand what is it like to, I don't even want to say what is it like, because that separates us. Share with me how it feels to be you right now. And in order to do that, you have to find out more about yourself. And that goes very deep. And it relates to A Course in Miracles. Because we start where we're at. And so we start on the level of the person. We can't just pretend not to be the person anymore. One of the things I enjoy so much about my individual classroom is that I've discovered that the paradoxes work for me, that I need to delve into my personality in order to be released from my personality. And that occurred for me spontaneously over many years. It wasn't my goal, and I didn't know that was possible. But as I deconstructed Amy without realizing it by using psychotherapy practices such as, and they turned out to be spiritual practices too, such as making distinctions between what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling emotionally and what I'm feeling physically and what I'm feeling physiologically, which I would say is more internal physical feelings or pure sensation. And as I can make distinctions between the associations that arise, okay, typically a client would say to me, I feel silly about doing a Gestalt experiment. And we could break out, I'm telling myself as a thought that it's silly to put my dead parent in the chair across from me in my imagination. And the feeling that goes with the thought that that's a silly thing to do is embarrassment. I will feel exposed and I will judge myself as silly if I do this experiment. And how do you know you feel embarrassed? You have to locate that feeling in your body. And all of this awareness leads to more and more honesty. And the phrase that came to me a long time ago is that self-awareness with a lowercase s leads to self-awareness with an uppercase S. It's just like an intellectual reading of A Course in Miracles and starting to understand the concepts and the principles eventually leads to a felt experience of those concepts and principles. You got to start somewhere. So I respect that process. I don't belittle approaching A Course in Miracles intellectually. Many times I'll say, sink into the light language beneath the words. And then we always cycle back to the words. And we can work from the inside out and the outside in. And I always welcome questions about that. And Taylor, you have a question.
Well, I wanted to expound on the email correspondence that we had about NAbodhi. You invited me to share the response that I was having about it as far as the feelings and thoughts. I'm happy to share what that yielded. It it aligns with, I think, what you're speaking to. So I had like a dual experience and they were happening at the same time. It wasn't like a lockstep feeling. It was more synthesized. So that was different. On the one hand, there was just overwhelming joy for her. Yeah, it filled me with joy. And I felt like I shared her relief and her wholeness. And then on the other hand, it was undeniable fear. And so I traced that because I was like, why would I be afraid of her transition? And I became pretty quickly aware of, because of some behaviors that I was engaging in actively in those moments and previous days. It just like put a spotlight, and it's super petty, worldly, like embarrassing stuff, all up in personalities, mine and some others, and enemies and guilt, and all the ooey gooey of Earth School. Um, and so then with that came this understanding of like, oh, well, wow, that's the ego immediately trying to appropriate something beneath that should be gold. So dig a little deeper. What's past that? And it became like dropping the shame and dropping the guilt and just kind of acknowledging, oh, this is what I'm doing with my time lately. Is that what I want to be doing with my time? No, I don't want to do these things. And thank you, NAbodhi, for bringing this awareness to me in this way, and not beating myself up, and not, shaming myself or feeling bad, or, it was just like, okay, so let's pay more attention to my actions and where I'm spending my time and putting my attention. And I felt like I shared that with her, and it was really awesome. It didn't last long, but it was a cool way to come to that awareness so gently. And I felt very honored that in whatever way, even if it was just, my brain trying to make something. I shared it with her, or she shared it with me, or we shared it together, you know. So that's what happened.
Thank you for sharing that, Taylor. What you said about time is very present for me, because this morning in chapter 15, the Holy Instant, the first section is the two uses of time. Exactly what you're saying. How do we want to spend our time? Just with our usual petty ego concerns, or letting the Holy Spirit use time in another way for us, use time for healing, for bringing us back to the mind where we can address the actual cause of our fear, and how time can make us feel, or maybe this was in a recent workbook lesson, can make us feel hopeless or discouraged, because it feels like we're never going to get the course, or we're never going to finish our awakening, or, it's going to take a very, very long time. And the Holy Spirit doesn't use time in that way. All we need is willingness, a tiny willingness to see what we've been unable to see, willingness to know our essence and discover how we've been blocking that knowledge. And willingness to be intuitive and imaginative and even playful, the way I feel you were, Taylor, in processing somebody's death. I know that you also felt sadness. Can you imagine, everybody, if we allowed ourselves to not even feel sadness? I think we all feel it, and that's perfectly okay, because for me, feeling sadness is connecting with my heart and feeling alive, actually, because I think sadness can have different flavors to it. And sadness has changed for me from depression, despair, hopelessness, a great sense of loss or deprivation, to you might say more bittersweet and ongoing connection, but I have to adjust to remaining in relationship now that there's no body there. And it's transitional, this sadness for me. So sadness reminds me of the love now, instead of reminding me of loss. And that's unexpected. I didn't know that that could happen. This comes from being attentive. Don.
Good morning. So I wasn't going to talk about NAbodhi, but just for a moment, I will share that my experience was, when I heard, was sadness. And I think if I would say the sadness was a little bit of, was in a sense sad that I didn't see NAbodhi when she was in her form of body on the Zoom meetings, that I can see that that my seeing her was really perception. It was really informed by perception that didn't really allow me to understand and to have empathy. So that was remarkable to me. And I think it also speaks to what I wanted to share with regard to your sharing about being curious or understanding and having empathy. Of quite a few years, probably about 30 years ago, and I'd had the course for about 10 years, and I'd studied it off and on. Mainly I did the text. And I had the opportunity to teach a group of parents really about empathy with their kids, being open to their children. And one evening, a young, attractive woman was sharing. She was a young mother, single, and she was sharing how she had wanted to be an actress, and that she had a contact in Hollywood, a friend who knew a producer or somebody of that stature. And this person arranged a meeting for her with this guy. And so she was telling this story this evening. She went there and she got in there, and in no time at all, she she got the feeling this wasn't an interview; it was a seduction. And I know that my initial looking at it was with kind of like, was judging her, making her responsible for, I don't know, it wasn't it wasn't a good feeling, but I was being negative. But then, and this is something I wanted to share because it's so unintellectual. Suddenly, I literally found myself looking outward from within her at what she'd been talking about. And it was just such a phenomenal shift. And the reason I'm sharing this is a little bit to highlight that the practice can inform our experience without implementing, because I'm still implementing lessons when I'm trying to get deeper. So I'm in a way approaching it intellectually. And this wasn't intellectual, it was just by grace.
Yeah.
Obviously, I must have had the intention in my heart of hearts to want to be helpful, to want to be connected. Anyway, I had that experience, and then that informed what I don't remember what I communicated, but it just shifted everything. The reason I want to share is because I want to solidify that idea of how that could be in my relationships in general, but particularly in my intimate relationship, where I would just be such a blessing if in the middle of what started out as acrimony or just not really being engaged, that I could suddenly be in Michelle, my partner's looking and see myself, see this Hollywood producer and recognize, how that could be for her. Not my idea of myself, but apparently there is that kind of the worldly getting personality. And anyway, so I just wanted to share because I'd like to have that experience. I would imagine anybody would like that experience because it doesn't involve some real grinding experience. It's really by grace. And it does, I think, speak to the teaching that we can get the idea that we're making it happen, that we're doing it. But I guess with enough cultivation through the course, well, maybe it's like Holy Instant. I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to share that for myself to vivify that as a possibility and to invite it and as a possibility and to demonstrate it. I think how it could be for anyone. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. I really appreciate how articulate you just were in describing and also several times stating your purpose, which is to, I'm going to use the word reinforce this experience while also realizing that it's grace. And grace happens when we have a regular practice. My best regular practice is applying the principles of A Course in Miracles and the forgiveness practice, and they overlap and they're one and the same. In my daily life, when I did the workbook the first time, I did the meditation every day, maybe not 5 times a day, but I really followed those time periods of no less than 15 minutes, no less than 30 minutes. And when I'm with a group, meditation comes easily, or I really sit with guided meditation, but I don't have a disciplined meditation practice. And I say that to let you know that you really, for yourself, need to find out without criticism, without judgment, just to find out what is your practice. Because many of the workbook lessons say, add your own thoughts to this lesson. Jesus will give us actual thoughts and things to say to ourselves and fill in the blank here and there. And he'll say, and add whatever thoughts come to you. I've been blogging the daily lessons and trying to keep up with them. And in rereading the first 50 lessons, they're so powerful and so healing and so profound. one thing that Jesus says along the way is, we really need to be vigilant against the ego on a regular basis. But another thing he says that might seem contradictory is that we should not make a ritual of anything, and we can trust that the Holy Spirit is with us always and informing us now that we've really made the decision to prioritize the Holy Spirit over the ego, even though we're forgetting all the time. And that contributes to grace, is that willingness and that sense of purpose that I want to wake up now. I get it that I'm dreaming, even though I don't fully believe it. I've had enough life experience, good or bad, that I'm on to the next level of spirituality. However you want to put it for yourself. Often it comes initially in terms of pain. I'm suffering and I don't know where else to go. I'm on my knees. That's fine too. That's definitely how I came in. But that was 1998. And time doesn't matter. You're not necessarily a better course student because you've been doing it a long time. In fact, I know many people can get really frustrated that they've been doing it a long time and it doesn't seem to have made a dent in certain ways. And that's okay too, just to be kind with ourselves, that is the ego discouraging us. And if we zoom out telescopically and put things into a greater perspective, you may have made incredible leaps and bounds in this one lifetime. We don't know how many dreams we've had or how many lifetimes are under our belt while we're operating within the limitations of the ego thought system. So we're going back into The Hero of the Dream. I would love for you to read. There's just something so beautiful about the readings. Don't worry if you mess up a word. None of that matters. It's just participating. That there's something about it that's just beautiful.
The hero of the dream. The body is the central figure in the dreaming of the world. There is no dream without it, nor does it exist without the dream in which it acts as if it were a person to be seen and be believed. It takes a central place in every dream, which tells the story of how it was made by other bodies, born into the world outside the body, lives a little while and dies, to be united in the dust with other bodies dying like itself. In the brief time allotted it to live, it seeks for other bodies as its friends and enemies. Its safety is its main concern. Its comfort is its guiding rule. It tries to look for pleasure and avoid things that would be hurtful. Above all, it tries to teach itself its pains and joys are different and can be told apart.
The dreaming of the world takes many forms because the body seeks in many ways to prove it is autonomous and real. It puts things on itself that it has bought with little metal discs or paper strips the world proclaims as valuable and real. It works to get them, doing senseless things, and tosses them away for senseless things it does not need and does not even want. It hires other bodies that they may protect it and collect more senseless things that it can call its own. It looks about for special bodies that can share its dream. Sometimes it dreams it is a conqueror of bodies weaker than itself. But in some phases of the dream, it is the slave of bodies that would hurt and torture it.
The body's serial adventures from the time of birth to dying are the theme of every dream the world has ever had. The hero of this dream will never change, nor will its purpose. Though the dream itself takes many forms and seems to show a great variety of places and events wherein its hero finds itself, the dream has but one purpose, taught in many ways. This single lesson does it try to teach again and still again, and yet once more, that it is cause and not effect, and you are its effect and cannot be its cause.
Thus, are you not the dreamer, but the dream? And so you wander idly in and out of places and events that it contrives. That this is all the body does is true, for it is but a figure in a dream. But who reacts to figures in a dream unless he sees them as if they were real? The instant that he sees them as they are, they have no more effects on him, because he understands he gave them their effects by causing them and making them seem real.
How willing are you to escape effects of all the dreams the world has ever had? Is it your wish to let no dream appear to be the cause of what it is you do? Then let us merely look upon the dream's beginning, for the part you see is but the second part, whose cause lies in the first. No one asleep and dreaming in the world remembers his attack upon himself. No one believes there really was a time when he knew nothing of a body and could never have conceived this world as real. He would have seen at once that these ideas are one illusion, too ridiculous for anything but to be laughed away. How serious they now appear to be, and no one can remember when they would have met with laughter and with disbelief. We can remember this if we but look directly at this cause, and we will see the grounds for laughter, not a cause for fear.
Let us return the dream he gave away unto the dreamer, who perceives the dream as separate from himself and done to him. Into eternity, where all is one, there crept a tiny, mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. In his forgetting, did the thought become a serious idea and possible of both accomplishment and real effect. Together we can laugh them both away and understand that time cannot intrude upon eternity. It is a joke to think that time can come to circumvent eternity, which means there is no time.
Thank you. So is this making sense so far? Especially in this paragraph 5 and 6, I'd just like to clarify or reiterate the whole beginning of this section, the quote unquote hero of the dream. Jesus is basically describing to us how the ego has set things up. And he tells us in paragraph 5, first he asks us a question. I've noticed that Jesus asks us a lot of questions in A Course in Miracles, and I have the urge to compile them all and just read them. That's a big job. So let's just look at how willing are you? This is the beginning of paragraph 5. How willing are you to escape effects of all the dreams the world has ever had? Now, this requires honesty. If we say, how willing am I to escape effects of all the dreams the world, my real life, what I take to be my real life, has ever had? Do I even understand this question? What is Jesus asking me? I don't know. Yes, maybe I'm sick of this world. I want out. You just, allow that question to be a real question. Let's not just breeze by it. And then he follows up. Is it your wish to let no dream appear to be the cause of what it is you do? We have taken for granted that the world is the cause and other people are the cause of how we feel and what happens to us. We take ourselves to be the victims of the world and other people. Even if we happen to be the alpha dog, underneath that, we still feel helpless. That's why we have to be alpha. Let me ask the question again. Is it your wish to let no dream appear to be the cause of what you do? So are we willing to rethink the cause of what we do? Then let us merely look upon the dream's beginning. We've never thought about this. I mean, hopefully as course students we have, but up until now, think about the dream's beginning. This isn't a dream. This is real life. What are we talking about? For the part you see is but the second part, whose cause lies in the first part. So what we're seeing in the world, everything, is the second part of what's really going on. And we're consumed and hypnotized by what Jesus is calling the second part of the dream. And he's rewinding. He's taking us back now towards the first part of the dream. And that means that we're elevated above the body and the world into the mind, which is where the dream originated. And it turns out we are the dreamer of the dream. Boom. Not you and me as separate individuals, but it also turns out that we're not separate individuals. We're a collective son of God with decision-making power to believe in the dream, to take the dream as real, and to forget that we are the dreamer of the dream. Okay, then Jesus says, no one asleep, that's us, and dreaming in the world remembers his attack upon himself. And he's not only shining a light on this truth so that we can start to grasp it and to recognize what we already are, which is how we often begin class. We've come together under the auspices of the Holy Spirit, the memory of God within us, to recognize what we already are. So Jesus is shining a light on what we already are, the Son of God, in mind, a state of mind that has nothing to do with physicality. And he's empathizing with us. He's empathizing. No one asleep and dreaming in the world remembers his attack upon himself. You don't remember your attack upon yourself. We really take that in, sponge that in. You know, it can be very mind-boggling. What? I did what? What do you mean? Why would I attack myself? No one believes there really was a time when he knew nothing of a body. We're so identified with the body. This goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of class today, that this paradoxical process of getting to know our personality and getting to know our body, and they go together. And by doing that, we loosen the way that we're bound to identifying with the body. Because it's so difficult to not know ourselves as this. No one believes there really was a time when he knew nothing of a body and could never have conceived this world as real. So let's just take a moment to allow Jesus, we're listening to you. You're right here in the classroom with us. We would like to pay attention. We're willing to not even have to believe what you're saying. We're willing to recall the truth of what you're saying, because this truth is always with us. It never goes away. So how are we eluding this truth, this light? That's how we will recognize the truth, by seeing how we're eluding it or blocking it, and then being willing to have that block dissolved. And that can feel very frightening. because the ego has convinced us that the block is a wall that's keeping us safe, whereas it's actually an obstacle to the awareness of love's presence. So there was a time when we would have seen that these ideas are one illusion, too ridiculous for anything but to be laughed away. Nobody can remember when they would have been met with laughter and disbelief. We can remember this. We can. We're here to remember this if we look directly at the cause. We've replaced the real cause with the world. And somewhere in the Course it says, nothing so blinding as perception of form. Ken Wapnick loved to say that. Nothing so blinding as perception of form. We are mesmerized by form. Out there, over here, everywhere. We can't take our eyes off it. Our eyesight is glued to form. And if it's not through the eyes, it's through our other senses. Jesus is inviting us to a formless awareness through the holy instant, through the forgiveness practice, to have another experience, an altered state of mind. We could use the word alter, A-L-T-A-R, an altered state of mind that rises us above thought, that transcends the limitations of human thought, and then have a moment of grace here and there, and more often. So we have to look at the cause. And when we do, we will see the grounds for laughter and not a cause for fear. The ego is a fear-based system. The ego introduced us to the idea of fear, which cannot exist when all you are is a oneness that is made of love and life and light. There's no fear there, and there's no opposites there. There are no polarities in our true state. Just breathe through that for a moment. There are no polarities in our true state. There's nothing to think about in our true state. There are no problems in our true state, no dilemmas. We're being, we're extending, we're creating, and those words are just a tiny attempt to open the way to reality with a capital R, which cannot be put into words. You know, Don, when you gave that example of the experience you had of empathy, of suddenly being in that woman's body and having her experience, wouldn't it be even more amazing to be in the body of Jesus and have his experience of you, of us? Jesus's experience of us right now. He just sees us through the eyes of love. Can we tolerate being seen through the eyes of love? Can we tolerate the spark that can never leave us, the inner memory of God within us, lighting up? Lighting up. Right now, just lighting up from within. Through empathy with our teacher. This is Jesus's course. My sense of it is, and I feel that this is stated outright somewhere, that Jesus's teacher is the Holy Spirit. If we go into maybe the clarification of terms, there's somewhere where Jesus says, I was a man who walked the earth and then awoke to my true nature. through the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is the bridge back to God. Jesus practices servant leadership. He's following. He's a leader through following the Holy Spirit, following the lifeline back to God. I always think of that memory of God within us as an umbilical cord that never gets cut. And it's our lifeline. We just take hold of it and just one hand over the next, just go back or go up, move up that ladder in the Song of Prayer. The ladder that we came down when we descended away from the holy mind of God into duality, awareness of God mind, and then all the way into a belief system of sin, guilt, and fear, darkness, separation. Don, I see you. I'm going to go to Carol first because she hasn't had a chance yet. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to ask you, seems like that it's true that our life is, I mean, we're all in different places, our souls are when we incarnate. I just have such a strong feeling that it's a constant letting go. It's a constant surrender. It's like never ending surrender. It's like so basic. Just, I know I've only come a few times, but just wanted your take on helping me understand that a little better. That I guess it's sort of abstract in a way. I mean, I know deep in my heart it's true. I'm saying boiling it down, distilling it. Not that that's easy.
So, Carol, a couple of questions. When you say that it's a process of just letting go and like a constant surrender, what is your personal experience of surrendering? How does that work for you?
It's breathing, just breathe and let go. Relax, breathe and let go. For the longest time, I didn't think about my breathing, but it's become very key to realizing, wow, just breathe. For years, I just didn't really breathe. So, breathe and let go. And so when I'm conscious of that, there's the Holy Spirit. There's space for that love or whatever the Holy Spirit can speak to me then,
That's a very pure process. I'm very happy to hear that breathing has become important to you as a method, as a way. And for now, continue with that. At some point, we let go of letting go. And that just happens, do you have an image that goes with this? Breathe and let go, breathe and relax. Is there any imagery?
It's mainly able to occur when I'm meditating, when I'm quiet and I'm just being with whatever comes up. And then I breathe and let go. Sometimes what comes up is a memory that makes me sad and I cry. But in general, in my everyday life, it doesn't really, that process doesn't happen. I do have like an instant awareness if I'm interacting with someone and, I, how I react, is I'm able to slow down more and just let be what is said instead of reacting.
Yeah. Those are great signs of doing the practice, moving from reactivity to responsivity. So responding is being with ourselves first and finding out what is going on inside of me before we reply. I like that. Maybe it's a Buddhist thing, with the questions before I reply, before I speak at all. Is it kind? Is it necessary? There are two others.
True.
True.
Kind,
And what's the other
necessary,
one?
true. And then it's, would it be better not to say it? Something
Thank
like
you.
that, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Is it
Yeah.
kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? Would it be better to just leave it unsaid?
Mhm.
So
Mm.
that speaks to, being reactive versus responsive. And it's very good to, if, some sadness comes up and a memory with it or without it, if you're able to cry and feel relief at the end of crying, that's part of the undoing process. So it does sound like you're very much in your process. Any of us may have an exalted experience that is nuanced, so we might not pay attention to it. Like when I breathe and relax, I always want to lay on my back. I feel supported if I'm laying on my back. And that's how I like to meditate, although they say, you may fall asleep that way. But if I'm sitting up, I just feel that I'm working with my spine too much and it distracts me.
Mm.
So then I can start to feel like I'm floating.
Mm.
And if I bring my attention to that lovely floating feeling, I'm changing my relationship with my body is being changed through letting go of the clench of habitual personal identification. Kind of like floating on my back in the ocean. Sometimes I've felt that I'm floating in amniotic fluid when I've had somebody do craniosacral work on me. So that's like floating in my mother's womb, but it's Earth Mother, it's large. So these experiences are available and they start shifting us to a larger, more expansive relationship with the body, which becomes guided by the Holy Spirit, each in our own way. The last thing you said, Carol, was boil it down. Can you say a little more about boiling it down?
Yeah, distilling it to, I think I was saying that when I meditate. Yeah, I just breathe. I just feel like that breathe, relax, release, is just key because, we come into the world with we buy into so many stories. Obviously, you've talked about this, so much inculcated with so much shit, so much crap, that, it's just, so I just try to keep it as simple as I can without getting involved. I find that I'm at a place where it's hard for me to deal with the outside world because I just take it all in, I'm one of those, like we all are here, empathic people. It's like, oh God, it's so hard to keep it there and not take it in.
So that's a
I'm
good
grateful to
point.
be here.
I'm happy you're here. It's, because you're in touch with your experience. And so we can process it together and everybody vicariously apply it to yourself. Yeah. So if we've been sponging in by default all the crap of the ego thought system. And now we are willing to turn to the Holy Spirit and be spongeable for that wisdom. That's the purification process. As we align with the Holy Spirit, and as we allow ourselves to know little by little that we are actually a collective, we can start to experience ourselves as an expression of God rather than as an ego individual, rather than as a flesh and blood individual. We start to have a whole self-esteem shift. And we mentioned law of attraction last time. And I was saying that for me, A Course in Miracles evolves that into confirmation. Rather than saying affirmations, we're saying confirmations. I am a son of God. Therefore, I am whole. I am free. I'm considering these things as confirmations of the truth. I'm not talking myself into them. I'm having a change of mind as Jesus says to me, this is what you really are. And then I can know Amy while I'm still in the dream state, but waking up from it in that transition. I can know myself as a unique expression of God. And that's the individual curriculum, our classroom, each one of us. But now, instead of me having to prove myself in the world as Amy Torres, instead, I'm relating to Amy as an expression of God, having certain gifts that God has given me that flow through me, that I get to enjoy as they express themselves, and that I'm actually a communication device. So in the dream, it appears that I'm flesh and blood, but as I know myself more and more as this flute that God plays, this conduit to be a receiver and a transmitter of God's message, my relationship with myself shifts. So we still get to be the person. There's a lot of fear around how am I going to be a person? How am I going to function in the world? It's, Sandra got me thinking about this. I don't think she's here today, but she brought it up a couple of weeks ago about how the ego can, be a good secretary. And I used to say that too. I'm having a shift around that, around it's maybe not even the ego that's the good secretary. I'm not quite sure how to put it. There's a functionality there. People do go through big awakenings where Eckhart Tolle sat on a park bench for 3 years, in a state of bliss, but he wasn't earning a living. Mooji went through that too. Mooji tells very touching stories of how one of his sisters invited him to come live with her while he was in this state of having discovered the self, and he had to stop teaching at the college where he taught art. He couldn't do it anymore, and Mooji was penniless. He tells a story where he would literally go into his shoes and just feel around and see if maybe there was a dime in there. He said his sister shared her cupboards with him, and that her half had all these, jars and cans of food, and his half was empty. His sister was very nice to him. She said, of course you can take from my half. He tells stories of how he'd go to the park and just sit there, and some homeless guy would whack him with a banana. And I think it turned out that Mooji, I wish I could remember the story right. I think that the guy then gave him the banana, and Mooji was like, look, I'm being fed. I don't have to do anything. There's a period of time that can be very disoriented. I heard one woman sharing that she almost walked in front of a bus. But guess what? These people are telling their stories because she did not walk in front of a bus. Something stopped her. Mooji did not starve to death. Eckhart did not, not have a roof over his head. But these are the fears that the ego tells us. It's okay to read A Course in Miracles. The ego will sort of catch up with us. It's okay to read it, but but don't go too far. Who's going to take care of you then? And that actually will not apply. But we don't have to force ourselves into some extreme situation unless it really feels like you're calling. David Hoffmeister is a good example of somebody who really felt called to just, just whatever I think was in his pockets, just start to move through the world and listen to the voice of Jesus, and then build up communities. And I don't want to thoroughly endorse David because I've heard some crazy things about his communities, but he shines, David shines with light. So, and that's true of spiritual teachers, that they can be very, very purely connected with God, but the ego is still running their personality. And so you see, a lack of integrity when it comes to sexual relationships with disciples, or evading taxes, or, many things that make one want to have a direct experience of God and not go through another human. And certainly take what you like and leave the rest. I'm not sure how I got there, but here we are. So it is amusing to me that we're supposed to start with paragraph 7, and we're at paragraph 6 right now. Okay, let me just go through paragraph 6. So let us return the dream he, the Son of God, gave away unto the dreamer, which is the Son of God, who perceives the dream as separate from ourselves. We see the dream as separate from ourselves and being done to us. But we're going to return the dream to the dreamer, which means we're giving the dream back to ourselves. Into eternity, where all is one, there crept a tiny mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. In his forgetting, did the thought become a serious idea? It went from being a humorous idea at which most of the Son of God chuckled, and a piece of the Son of God mind took seriously. And possible, in that seriousness, possible of both accomplishment and real effects. This is just an idea. It's not actually possible, just in a mind that takes the idea seriously. Together, Jesus says, we can laugh them both away. What are the both? The tiny mad idea and taking it seriously. And understand that time cannot intrude upon eternity. I just love the airtight logic of Jesus when he has us face these things. Time cannot intrude upon eternity. How could that happen? It is a joke to think that time can come to circumvent eternity, to circle around it and like put a lasso around it, when eternity means there is no time. I'm going to keep reading. A timelessness in which time is made real. A part of God that can attack itself. A separate brother as an enemy. A mind within a body. All are forms of circularity whose ending starts at its beginning, ending at its cause. So it's like we're throwing a lasso around ourselves and tightening it until we choke. And if we just circle back, we see that we threw the lasso. We're choking ourselves and going, oh, this is being done to me. This is terrible. My life is, wait a minute. Let me just backtrack. Wait. I picked up the rope. I made the knot. I threw it and I pulled it tight. At that point, that's crazy. And we can bust out laughing. The world you see depicts exactly what you thought you did. We're projecting out onto the world what we thought we did because we can't stand that we did this. Except that now you think that what you did, once we project it out and make a world, a picture, an image, we think what we did is being done to us. That way we don't have to take responsibility for it. We don't want to be responsible for this horrible bind that we find ourselves in. The guilt for what you thought is being placed outside yourself. The guilt for what we thought up is being placed, we're projecting it outside ourselves. And on a guilty world that dreams your dreams and thinks your thoughts instead of you. That's projection. It's like throwing up. We're hurling something that's horrible inside of us out, but it doesn't work because we always retain the guilt. The guilt brings its vengeance, or the world. The world brings its vengeance, not your own. That's what we're telling ourselves. We want to be the innocent victim of somebody else's vengeance, God's vengeance, the world's vengeance. We don't want to accept that it's our vengeance. A guilty world keeps you narrowly confined within a body, which it punishes because of all the sinful things the body does within its dream. You have no power to make the body stop its evil deeds because you did not make the body, that's what we tell ourselves, and cannot control its actions, nor the body's purpose, nor the body's fate. This is just a manipulative story that we tell ourselves. And I'm just going to read the first sentence of paragraph 8. The world but demonstrates an ancient truth. You will believe that others do to you exactly what you secretly think you did to them. We're keeping it a secret from ourselves because we can't stand the feeling. Okay, so now I want to look at Eileen's question. Do I always need to explain myself to a brother to see if I'm projecting and dreaming or having a true encounter? Eileen, can we talk a little bit?
Yes, of course.
Can you give me an example?
Well, just from what I'm reading, I'm new to this. I'm on chapter 15, so this is I'm skipping ahead here in the class.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing, I do a lot of dreaming and project a lot. And the perception that I'm seeing, what the responses that I'm getting back from people, may not be a true encounter, or it's like that song, that old song, "Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood."
Yeah.
I just want to know how to be more authentic with people. That I don't really have a lot of people that I encounter. I'm kind of a little bit isolated. So this is part of my community, coming on here and interacting with people.
We're so glad to have you, Eileen. It's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, it's great. And it's great that you're a newbie. That's great. There's levels to your question, Eileen. Purely on the metaphysical level, we wouldn't have to go back and forth with a brother. However, in the classroom of practicing forgiveness, some people are available to have a juicy conversation. And I often suggest to people that they get a book called Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix. It's for couples, but you can read this book if you're not a couple, because he describes a process of imago dialogue. So it's a way that people can speak with each other. It includes things like talking with somebody else about my intention versus the impact I had on you. impact versus intention. Or it talks about active listening, how to listen well and reflect back to somebody what they said and check in and say, did I get that right? And is there any more? And we do that for each other. And it just opens up a whole world of finding out misunderstandings, projections. It's transformative to do this kind of talking. You could also call it fair fighting, conscious communication. It's about having conscious partnership with people. Many people are not interested in doing this, are resistant to doing this. And if you try it with somebody who's emotionally dishonest, they can tell you you've been horrible when you really weren't. And, and it's backfiring. So it's also useful, of course, to do this with a therapist who can do this kind of practice with you. We're always projecting. So at first, the forgiveness work is simply getting the hang of how we're projecting and being willing to withdraw the projection and own what we did and how we felt without criticizing ourselves or feeling guilty. And the only way that we could not judge or criticize or feel guilty is if we join with the Holy Spirit, if we feel the love of Jesus for us. We can't force ourselves to not feel guilty. That probably would mean that we were suppressing the guilt. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. Now, Alex asked, what is meant by we created our bodies? That takes us back to the metaphysics, Alex, that when the Son of God followed the tiny mad idea that we could separate from God mind, in order for the ego to keep itself existing in our imagination, it creates the physical world. And it says, follow me, I'll keep you safe here. And when we follow the ego into the physical world, that's the first body. The world is the body, and then human bodies are bodies. And that's just an ego manipulation. So the dreamer of the dream is the one who dreams up the idea of bodies. We're not actually a body, and there are no bodies in the mind. And quantum physicists and Rupert Spira talk about how the world is actually, you can't prove that it's physical, but it is an experience in the mind. So things are happening through our imagination, not through the brain, but through the God mind imagination, which then plays this big game of pretend and make believe. And there's a lesson 15, our thoughts are images that we have made. Our thoughts outpicture ideas that we take to be reality, including bodies. But it's not. However, while we think we're here, A Course in Miracles gives us the forgiveness practice to use in the dream in order to withdraw our belief from the dream. That's one of the many paradoxes. That's the short answer. Oh, guest appearance. We say hello. Come here, you.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
Oh, baby.
you are a rich woman, Amy.
I know.
Oh my goodness. What's the name?
Smudges. Smudges.
Oh my goodness.
My mother, who's staying with me for the winter.
Oh.
Oh, smudges. Oh.
Smudges. Usually we do that in private.
That's so sweet.
My mother told me that his green eyes are celadon. And I looked up the color celadon green, and it's so true. Beautiful, beautiful color. Smudges, yeah. I found smudges under a car in a fast food parking lot in Miami. And I just scooped him up and took him home. He's 12 years old now. He was only about 6 months old when I got him. The vet can tell from the teeth. Yeah. They say orange cats are the best.
Was he afraid when you found him?
Rico, I'm so happy you asked me that. He was not afraid. He was sort of mischievous and goofy. And I said to him, do you want to come home with me? And he was like, all right. You know, like he could have stayed. He didn't seem unhappy, but he loves being with us. He never wanted to go outside again. So he saw the difference big time. And of course, he was riddled with intestinal worms and fleas, and he had the ear mites, and he was filthy dirty. And when we took him to the animal hospital, they said, what's his name? And Scott said, Smudges. And it stuck. Very, very loving cat. Nurtures all the other cats. Yeah. Okay, gang. So let me just see. We've come up to 1:30. All that matters is that we absorb, and similar to what Carol said, we soften, open, release, and heal. Soften, open, release, and heal. So it's been so delicious to be with you. I so appreciate you showing up every Wednesday. I get to teach what I want to learn.